Number 10. Louise. Louise is not a major character in terms of being a huge mutant or key villain to mutants in the current series, but she is someone who will likely end up becoming a close friend and ally of Wolverine's. She first appeared in issue number 1 of the newest Wolverine series that started in 2020. I actually remember reading that first issue when I was in New York City right before the world went crazy. Oh my, what a time. Memories. Louise is a member of the Night Guard, and while she dropped off after issue 1, as we keep coming back to Dracula and the vampire nation's going-ons in the Wolverine series, she too has resurfaced. Louise was given a suit by Forge to help slow her transformation into a vampire after she and her Night Guard were attacked and either killed or turned. She once more teamed up with Logan as they went head-to-head with Dracula and his loyal subjects, and likely she'll be back again as this slow burning story continues to be developed. In fact, I think this is going to be like the big story before the end of this current Wolverine series, whenever we get there. Number 9. Cyclops Lass. So Cyclops Lass might not be one of the most important characters on this list, but I still think she is a character you should get to know because, well, she's just a cool character. I really like Cyclops Lass. Cyclops Lass is Beatrice Buddy Bartholomew and is the leader of the Children of the Atom. By the way, it took me a minute to realize when I first heard of this fan-composed mutant-inspired teen hero team's name that their group name was another phrase used for mutants and even the X-Men back in the day. It's pretty cool when you realize that. Neat stuff. Cyclops Lass appears to have powers similar to the X-Men member and often leader, Cyclops, but in reality we learned that it was actually alien tech which gave her team their powers, allowing them to appear like mutants and like some of their favorite X-Men members. Still, Buddy is a cool character, and while Children of the Atom has ended, I do hope we get to see more of its team members. Buddy made her first cameo appearance in Marvel's Voices issue number 1 and her full appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. Number 8. Cosmar. Cosmar is one of the new mutants, if that makes sense. She first appeared in issue number 9 of the newest series from 2020. Currently there are 2 different groups of new mutants in that series, the one based on the mutant island nation of Krakoa, who are truly feeling those outcast vibes right now, and currently are like the Shadow King's lost mutant kids, and the other traditional new mutant team who is more focused on space adventures and other international exploits. When Cosmar's powers first manifested, it resulted in the death of her parents. Her powers cause her to suck people into her nightmares, as she creates a reality warping sphere surrounding her. All those who touch or interact with it run the risk of being sucked in. And I believe Forge actually made her a suit as well, as Forge is just making everybody little things to help them with their powers, to help her sort of control those powers so that they wouldn't be so disastrous. Number 7. Gimmick. Gimmick is a new mutant who first appeared and had her powers manifest in Children of the Atom. She was the one member of the team who actually ended up making it to Krakoa due to the fact that she was a real mutant, in addition to also being a major fangirl of the X-Men. But aside from her being a mutant, Carmen Cruz is also good friends with the fellow Children of the Atom, with Cyclops Lass, aka Buddy, probably being her best friend on the team and also her secret crush who she's in love with. Another thing that I love about Carmen is that she also is the person that makes all the costumes on the team, and she's super into cosplay, which I just think is like super cool and super cute. We don't have a lot of characters in the comics that are cosplayers, so I really liked that element. Gimmick's powers appeared initially to be similar to Gambit's, but this was all done using alien technology. In reality, when Carmen's mutant powers manifested, it was revealed that they were shape-shifting in nature and also granted her a healing factor. Carmen made her first cameo appearance in 2020 in Marvel's Voices issue 1, but would appear fully in the first issue of Children of the Atom the following year in 2021. Also, when she did have her Gambit powers, it was pretty cool because she was like throwing basically little like clothing pins, if that makes sense, at people, which I love. Number 6. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are relatively new characters and mutants who appeared within the last year, but we also now potentially have a different version of them in the current X books. They're likely from a different continuity due to what we learned during the Dawn of X period of the current line. There's like a version of them I think that's like 616, and then there's a version of them that doesn't actually have a reality number officially yet, but yes. Maxime and Manon, as we see them in the current timeline, are a brother and sister who together can heavily manipulate and warp the minds of others. Maxime can manipulate the emotions of his target, and Manon can manipulate and alter their memories, making the two a powerful duo when working in tandem. Maxime and Manon once served Ahab, being brainwashed into using their powers to make hounds for him. However, they would later be freed by Jean Grey, and Cable would convince her to look after them. Maxime and Manon are currently relevant because in the New Mutants series, they use their powers to make two humans attack one another and fight to the death, which is against Krakoan law. Ooh. However, nothing seems to have come from them taking this extreme action just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes around at some point. Number 5. Bae the Blood Moon. Bae the Blood Moon is an awesome new character who made her first appearance in the Ten of Swords event back in the second main book from the event, Ten of Swords Stasis. She was one of the Arakko mutants who was called to compete in the Otherworld tournament, fighting to represent her nation. However, her fight actually ended up being a marriage. Basically, the Otherworld tournament was gloriously weird because it was being led by Saturnine, so we had traditional sword fights combined with lots of different kinds of battles, including puzzle solving duels, food eating competitions, dance-offs, and even an arranged marriage. However, it also all worked out as Cypher and Bae were seemingly both enamored with the other, as they were both masters of language and communication, but who struggled to understand one another, which fascinated them both, especially Cypher. They were both married and were each awarded a point, as it was considered a shared victory for both sides. Also, the art in the issue of Excalibur where they get married is just so good. It's so great. I love it. Number 4. Chen Zhao. Chen is not a mutant, nor is she an ally to mutant kind. She is just the opposite, their enemy. After coming up against the Marauders, trying to inspire mutant hate in her people as a public figurehead, billionaire, and anti-mutant activist, she ended up allying herself with Homines Verendi. Still hell-bent on destroying mutant kind's reputation as heroes, and now especially focused on doing harm to the band of mutant heroes that we know as the Marauders. Chen Zhao made her first appearance back in 2019 in Marauders issue 1, which once again, if you haven't read any of this comic, why not go back and start with that first issue in Chen's first appearance. Currently, Chen is Homines Verendi's White Bishop, and she's definitely a villain that I think is going to be more prominent and keep getting like more badass, which I love. Number 3. Dolores Ramirez. Dolores Ramirez is another non-mutant, but someone who is a very important character within and around the X-Men universe currently. She is the head of the X-Desk, and no, I don't mean that she worked with Jonathan Hickman to bring our current line of X-Books to life. Within Earth 616, she is the one who presides over the United States government X-Desk, which monitors, keeps tabs on, and ultimately kind of spies on the mutant nation of Krakoa and its major players and political stratagems. The X-Desk is a department within the CIA. Dolores once offered to help fellow CIA agent Jeff Bannister, ally of Wolverine, who had been working with him, but he turned her down. Dolores was also one of the lucky few to get an invite to the Hellfire Gala and met with Storm in secret during her first appearance in Marauders issue 11, where she was rewarded for leaking some important information about poisoned medicine to the mutants. So while she's watching them, she also kind of seems pretty friendly. Number 2. Arakko. Arakko is both an island and a mutant, just like Krakoa. In fact, there was a time when both Krakoa and Arakko were joined together, but years ago they were separated. Arakko made their first appearance in Powers of X issue number 4, and later on we learn of all that went on there with the island, including the mutants who inhabited it and their connection to a vastly important mutant, Apocalypse. Following the Ten of Swords event, Arakko attempted to reunite with Krakoa, but both islands decided they were no longer really interested in one another, and the time had basically changed them. They reluctantly rejoined until a more suitable option was found for Arakko and the mutants of Krakoa. In planet-size X-Men, some of the mutants banded together under the direction of Magneto to terraform Mars and move Arakko and its inhabitants, the mutants of Arakko, to the now alive planet. That's what happens when you terraform a planet, you bring it to life again. I actually didn't know that Mars was considered a dead planet until I read Planet-Size X-Men, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm also learning some science facts, which is great. Number 1. Genesis. One of the most badass of all the new characters we've gotten recently in the world of X-Men. Genesis is the long-lost wife of Apocalypse, who also was one of the main leaders of Arakko. She ended up fighting against Annihilation and becoming its new host in order to save her people, uniting both the Amenthi and the mutants of Arakko. Donning the mask, she became a leader of the Amenthi demon army, but also lost a part of herself in the process, as the Annihilation mask possessed and corrupted her. However, during the Ten of Swords tournament, she fought against her husband, Apocalypse, who managed to free her from the golden helm of Annihilation, taking it for himself. But Apocalypse's will proved strong enough to resist its influence, and the mask was then transformed by Saturnine into a much less influential and corrupting staff, which was then gifted to Genesis. Genesis made her first full appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 12. But we wouldn't learn that she was Annihilation until much later. Number 10. Cherub. Cherub is another of the Children of the Atom we got to know over the course of their 6-issue series. Cherub is Gabe Brathwaite. His powers, or the alien tech that allows him to appear to have powers, grant him the ability to fly with his winged suit and also allow him to emit sonic blasts. His powers are similar to Banshee and Angels. We also know that he is a fan of Forge and Dazzler, as he also went to go get Forge's autograph and attended a Dazzler concert with his friends and fellow Children of the Atom members. He makes his first appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. Number 9. Dr. James Boggs. Dr. James Boggs made his first appearance in Wolverine issue 11 of the current 2020 series run, volume 7 overall of Wolverine. Dr. James Boggs was a doctor who was recruited by the Vampire Nation to study Wolverine's blood and find a way to use it to eliminate vampires' weaknesses. He began to question the morality of what he was doing, but then he was forced to keep working for Dracula and the Vampire Nation when they transformed his lab assistant into a vampire, and made him one of his test subjects. However, this also inspired Dr. Boggs to betray Dracula, causing him to join forces with Omega Red, who was also coerced into working with Dracula and the Vampire Nation initially, but decided to betray them in order to truly join forces with his new home of Krakoa. In the end, Boggs was killed, but the attack against the Vampire Nation was successful. He will likely be one of the main casualties in what will become an all-out war against the Vampire Nation. Number 8. Nighty Nightcrawler. So I know that technically everyone still keeps calling him Daycrawler, but Jason Thomas himself insisted he wanted to be renamed Nighty Nightcrawler during his time on the Children of the Atom team, and so I'm going to honor his request. Nighty Nightcrawler it is. Jason is the younger stepbrother of Marvel Guy, aka Benny Thomas, and the two near the end of the series get to have a really touching moment where we learn that Benny really does care about his younger stepbrother, despite seemingly resenting his new family members and dynamic. Nighty Nightcrawler's powers also come from alien tech like most of the rest of the Children of the Atom, and like his name implies, they are similar to Nightcrawler Kurt Wagner's powers, allowing him to teleport and modified to produce Nightcrawler's signature BAMF sound. BAMF! Number 7. Marvel Guy. Marvel Guy is Benny Thomas, stepbrother to Jason and also a member of the Children of the Atom. While Benny is a big Wolverine fan, his powers given to him by alien tech are more comparable to Jean's, hence his name Marvel Guy. However, they are also a lot more restrictive than Jean's power set, which at this point allows her to do just about anything. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but I also kind of feel like Marvel Guy's costume is a little bit more of an homage towards Wolverine, which I think is pretty cute. Like the other Children of the Atom, Marvel Guy has pieces of an older version of Magneto's helmet built in to protect him against telepaths, and he also possesses gloves which emit pheromones, allowing him to control and influence the minds of others. In most cases, he uses this to put his enemies to sleep, which I think is like the best way you could use those powers without being problematic, to be fair. Number 6. Jeff Bannister. Jeff Bannister is an ally and later friend of Wolverine's and a CIA agent who first appears in Wolverine issue number 1 of the current series and will likely show up again in the series in the future. He teamed up with Wolverine to learn the source of and put a stop to a deadly new that had surfaced called the Pollen. Together, he and Wolverine tracked down the Flower Cartel and the Pale Girl, who was initially thought to be a shared hallucination brought on by the drug, though we'd later learn that she was actually a real person. Jeff Bannister also has a daughter who suffered from cancer. After Bannister worked with and befriended Wolverine, Logan was actually able to help his daughter by getting her immediate access to Krakoan medicines, which helped to cure her. Logan also gifted Bannister a Krakoan gate following their adventure together. Number 5. Pale Girl. While the Pale Girl might be a new character who hasn't appeared too much just yet, her role in the Wolverine story arc in which she appeared was pretty important, and the revelation about her character and just who she was also pretty important and will likely lead to a huge ramification later on in the world of X-Men. As I said before, the Pale Girl was initially thought to be some kind of shared hallucination for those who use the pollen, until she was caught on camera. We'd later learn that the Pale Girl was actually a mutant, Meredith Milley. Meredith Milley was a secret dealer of the pollen and the one who was responsible for delivering shipments to the Order of the X from the Flower Cartel, which seemed to be Russian in origin and tied to mutants working for Russia. The Pale Girl was the missing piece to this puzzle and was also revealed to be a powerful mutant who, while appearing ghostly, could also take control of the minds of her victims, bending them to her will. Number 4. Death. Death is one of the children of Apocalypse and his wife Genesis. He is one of the original 4 Horsemen members, which also adds an extra dimension to the fact that Apocalypse generally is referred to any of his 4 Horsemen groups formed thereafter as his children. Although I guess he also kind of thinks of all mutants as his children. so there is that too. But Death is his actual and biological one of, anyways. Death ended up being the chosen champion for the Arakko tournament. He fought against Storm and was defeated. Their battle and just the focus on Storm and all of her struggles up till this point during it was amazing. And I wouldn't be surprised, as Death and Storm both also had a few flirty moments together, if we didn't see the two of them end up face to face again. I should also mention that Storm won her fight against Death while also being temporarily depowered. Yeah, because Storm is a badass. You can check out that fight in 2019's X-Force issue number 14. Recently, Death showed up in the current Wolverine series where he was approached by Logan and his vampire hunter friend, Louise, and asked to help them in their fight against Dracula and the Vampire Nation, to which he agreed. And if you're wondering, wait a minute, didn't he die at the end of the Ten of Swords tournament? He was like kind of torn apart? He didn't. He turns up in Sevalith later and he's alive. Don't worry about it, it's comics. I don't know if he's a vampire or he's just Death so he can't die. I don't know. Number 3. Psylocke's daughter. Psylocke's daughter doesn't have a name just yet, but is a character that was hugely focused on in the Fallen Angel series. If you are a Psylocke fan and you wanted a Kwannon-focused series, I highly recommend you check out that series. Psylocke teams up in the series with X-23 and young Cable in an attempt to find out and rescue her daughter. In the end, Mr. Sinister is the one who ends up in possession of the child, who now leads a cybernetic existence within Apoth's remains, and uses her safety as a leverage in order to motivate Kwannon to work for him as the leader of his Hellions team. While her daughter might not have a name yet, at least I don't think we've seen her with one, she was featured in an illusion created by Mastermind that Psylocke was trapped in issue 10 of Hellions. Another book that is a current recommended read for my Psylocke fans out there. And hopefully her daughter will get to come back and we'll get to see more of her. I think that could be cool. Number 2. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is the sister-in-law to Apocalypse, being the sister of his wife Genesis. Her mutant ability is probably one of the coolest out there, along with Domino's luck ability. Iska's power is that she can never lose. She was one of the chosen champions of Arakko who competed in the Otherworld tournament in Ten of Swords, and of course won against her competitor, surprise surprise, the current Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock. Her powers, however, seemingly forced her to change sides in the war between the mutant nation of Arakko and Annihilation's Amenthi demons. She abandoned the mutants of Arakko, joining up with the Amenthi due to the fact that the mutants had become the losing side, and her power prevented her from ever losing. So a little bit into her history there. I like Iska a lot. Number 1. Horticulture. Horticulture is probably one of my favorite new villain teams and groups of characters we've seen thus far in the current line. And they also were someone that could probably threaten the entire Earth, so they might become like huge supervillains in the future. They are a team of elderly women who are scientists, specifically working in the field of botany with plants. I don't know why I said with plants, that's kind of redundant, but you know what I mean. Botany, plants, those are things. Their goal is to eliminate a large chunk of the human population in an effort to return the Earth to a more natural and pristine state. Their leader is Augusta, and members include Lily, Edith, and Opal. It is possible there could be more members of Horticulture as well. These are just the 4 women that we are familiar with based on the 2019 X-Men series and Empire Limited series, where they appeared as enemies and for a short time during Empire, reluctant allies. We've also learned through the Avengers side of things that Harrower, Augusta's great niece, was a former member of the team who split off to do her own thing. Horticulture first made their appearance in volume number 5 of the X-Men in issue number 3. That's the 2019 X-Men series, not the 2021 one, which is the current one. Number 10. The Viscora. The Viscora are more than just one character. They are a bunch of them. They made their first appearance in 2020's Cable issue 5, where they appeared as an antagonistic alien race, although we haven't seen them since, really. I'm still of the mind that the Viscora will return, and perhaps that they never really left, but managed to infect either Scott Summers or Jean Grey, or possibly both, and are laying dormant waiting for a moment to strike. Of course, it's been a while now since we've seen them, so this probably isn't what happened. But either way, I would not be surprised if we saw them again. The Viscora were the reason that S.W.O.R.D. initially went offline and disappeared. Their goal is to travel the cosmos looking for new worlds to absorb into their collective consciousness, learning everything they can about them before completely cleansing said world or possibly universe, wiping out everything within its existence. Should admit, I don't know if they came from another world or another dimension. The portal that they come through kind of implies that they perhaps came from another dimension, but yeah, we haven't seen a lot of them. Number 9. Famine. Famine is another of Apocalypse's and originally 4 horsemen. Unlike Death, who I mentioned on our part 2 of this series, Famine was not as deeply involved in the Otherworld tournament, so we haven't got to know them quite as well as some of his more predominantly featured siblings. Famine, instead of being directly involved as a champion of Arakko in the Otherworld tournament featured in the Ten of Swords event, stayed behind instead to act as a representative and witness on behalf of Amenth and Arakko, watching the tournament unfold as a guest of Saturnine, there to witness the tournament and kind of argue about things going on. There was some of that happening. Number 8. Pestilence. Pestilence is the daughter of Apocalypse and another member of the original 4 horsemen. Pestilence probably has my favorite character design of all of Apocalypse's, wearing a sun disk headdress atop her head that covers half of her face. Initially, I thought her head was just actually half sun disk, which greatly informed the way I imagined her character's voice in my mind, to be honest. But I'm still gonna keep it like that in my mind. I wish I could put you in there so you could hear her voice, but I can't. And I definitely can't do a very good impression of it right now on the fly. But I'll work on that for the future. Pestilence is another of Apocalypse's that we kinda know less about, not actively participating in the Otherworld tournament in the Ten of Swords either, and also acting as a representative of Arakko and Amenth. However, both Pestilence and Famine did get involved near the end of the Ten of Swords event when an all-out war broke out between the mutants of Krakoa and the demons and mutants of Amenth and Arakko. Number 7. Ultimaton. Ultimaton actually isn't a new character in the sense of his first appearance, but we did get some new revelations that changes the way that we see his character and definitely makes him feel newly revitalized in terms of lore. Ultimaton's true identity has been unknown for years. Also, I hope I'm saying that right. We're talking over a decade in terms of comic book history of us not knowing who this really is. But in the recent giant-sized Phantom X, which came out in August last year, 2020 if you're watching this into the far future, we learned who Ultimaton really was, as the old villain created by Grant Morrison and Chris Bachalo back in 2003 finally became unmasked. Turns out that Ultimaton is closely related to Phantom X himself, being his identical brother who was also created in the world. One of the many attempts to create a perfect specimen by AIM. But unlike Phantom X, he wanted to stay in the world. He's like, I want to stay here, I'm good. Number 6. Sarah St. John. Although another seeming non-mutant, Sarah St. John could definitely be a huge person of interest moving forward in the new X-Corp comic. Also, this comic was probably my most anticipated new X-book in terms of all of the ones we've had announced up till this point. I was just so excited for a business-focused series, plus the return of the X Corporation, plus Angel and Monet both getting to have their time in the spotlight as the main characters of this book. And I gotta say, so far it has not disappointed me, even with all my extra hype about it. X-Corp issue 2 is the Hellfire Gala issue, where the newly relaunched X-Corp team are holding meetings with those interested in investing or otherwise helping the corporation along, making partnerships with them or working for them, you know what I mean? One meeting they don't really manage to get to until it's too late is with Sarah St. John, a representative of Noblesse Pharmaceuticals. Sarah proves to be charming when they do meet up and is the only human who reached out to X-Corp to arrange a meeting during the evening of the gala, should be noted. However, it's revealed that she already made a possibly lucrative sized deal with the newly formed and antagonistic to X-Corp group, Fenris Consulting, owned by the mutant Von Strucker twins Andrea and Andreas. Number 5. Children of the Vault 4.0. That's right, we're talking 4th generation Children of the Vault. It's getting real, baby! While the Children of the Vault may not be a new group, each time they return to the Vault, they're generally upgraded, and basically a new version of the team is produced. A new generation, if you will. Initially, with all the information the Vault had acquired, it was only able to evolve them to a 3rd generation, which already was really impressive and powerful. However, after acquiring Darwin's genetic material for study, they were able to evolve even past that final stage, giving us the unstoppable 4th generation of the Children of the Vault. We saw this evolution of the team in 2019's X-Men issue 19, and boy are they scary. I cannot wait to see the X-Men face them again in the future. I'm sure that's gonna happen. I love when I see things in just the X books in general and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a huge problem later down the line. Krakoa has so many enemies, it's crazy. Number 4. Solemn. Solemn is the one that I initially expected Wolverine to fight in the Ten of Swords event. I mean, I think we all did. But He didn't really. Solemn is one of the sword bearers of Arakko who was actually imprisoned when he was recruited. He was imprisoned because he had killed Bracken, War's husband, so War was initially reluctant in recruiting him, even more so when Solemn acted as though he was actually greatly needed and should not only be freed for serving as a champion of Arakko in the Otherworld tournament, but also deserved to receive rewards and gifts for his service. Solemn's powers as a mutant of Arakko grant him super strength and durability. His mutation is that he has adamantium skin. You can see then how he'd make a great match for Logan and why we were all expecting it to happen. Solemn first appeared in 2020's Wolverine in issue 6. He ended up teaming up with Wolverine and went to Hell when they both went to retrieve their blades needed to compete. Because they were in Hell, because Muramasa blades. As expected, he makes his return in Wolverine, where he ends up stealing Logan's Muramasa blade, which Wolverine used in, of course, the tournament. So now Solemn has 2 Muramasa blades. And everybody else has 0 Muramasa blades. Number 3. Ned. So you might all be thinking that I am crazy for putting Ned so high up on this list, but he's just so great. Honestly, you need to know about him just because of how hilarious and how great Ned is. Ned is a lackey of Ames who ends up being recruited by Phantom X to return to the world in an effort to save Storm. Because, well, Ned has super important AIM knowledge, or something like that. Ned ends up joining them in an attempt to save Storm from a version of the techno-organic virus, as Storm would rather save herself than give up to be killed off and resurrected by the Five. Which also, Storm is such a badass. Ned was also important enough to get an invite to the Hellfire Gala, where even after, I assume, receiving his payout from Phantom X to betray AIM, he was still wearing his AIM suit for some reason. Also, I love his appearance at the Hellfire Gala. If you haven't checked out all those issues, you should go and just look who's in the background, because there's a lot of little treats for all y'all that might have been reading all the X books. Ned makes his first appearance in Giant Size Phantom X, and then of course returns when we see them go actually back to the world in Giant Size Storm. Number 2. War. War is another child of Apocalypse, and the final member that I'll have touched on of the original 4 Horsemen. The final one, if you will. Unlike Famine and Pestilence, War did participate in the Otherworld tournament alongside her brother Death. War lost her match despite her unbridled rage because of the wonderful weirdness that was the Ten of Swords event, being a tournament that was led by the mischievous and unpredictable White Witch Saturnine. War ended up actually having to face off against one of her fellow sword bearers, Solemn. However, Solemn, knowing that War obviously really hates him because Solemn killed War's husband, took this opportunity to call in a favor owed to him by Wolverine, and so Wolverine actually had to step in for Solemn in the match. Solemn then revealed that Wolverine was actually the one to have defeated her son in a battle to the death during that match, which of course made War furious with grief and rage. Her anger, while initially making her appear stronger, actually ended up making her vulnerable to an attack from Wolverine, and he managed to cut off her hand and win the match for Solemn, gaining a point for Arakko, unfortunately, with his victory, even though he won. Bittersweet. Number 1. Summoner. Summoner was actually the character featured on our Part 2 thumbnail, so for those who wondered who that was, here's your full answer. Summoner is the grandson of Apocalypse and the son of War and Bracken. However, Summoner is one of the characters who did not survive the Otherworld tournament. Summoner was one of Arakko's sword bearers and champions. He faced off with Wolverine in Ten of Swords in the Otherworld tournament and lost against Logan, being killed with the Muramasa blade. Though it should be noted their fight against one another was pretty epic. Definitely a great read. You can check out that battle in 2020's Wolverine in issue 7. Summoner was a summoner, hence his name. He was able to summon and control the dark beasts of Arakko, elementals, and demons. It should also be noted that Summoner also betrayed Krakoa, pretending to be a friend and then being like, yeah, I'm just here to actually backstab my grandpa Apocalypse and backstab all you mutants because we want to take over Krakoa. Hey. He didn't thumbs up anybody after though, just to be clear. Number 10. Warbird. While not a specific member of the core team, Warbird was a member of the Jean Grey School. In fact, she was considered a member of the faculty of sorts. She arrived with Kid Gladiator when he came to attend the school. She also fought on a few separate occasions to protect the school and its students, namely of them Kid Gladiator. Warbird herself is not a mutant but a member of the Shi'ar alien race and was born to be a fierce warrior, which indeed indeed, she is. Warbird is as much her codename as it is her rank in the Shi'ar's forces. Warbirds are considered elite warriors in the Shi'ar Empire who are basically bred and trained from birth to be the best of the best. Number 9. Dagger. Dagger was recruited alongside Cloak to join the Dark X-Men, Hammer and Norman Osborn's supplemental mutant team. Although Cloak and Dagger are technically not mutants, but they were considered, I guess, mutant enough. The history of the retcons involving their origin are long and quite inconsistent, and I've talked about it at length before in other videos. At one point they were considered mutants and on and off have been considered as such in the comics, but ultimately it seems they're considered to be simply believed to have been mutants while their powers actually came from exposure to experimental. Number 8. Cloak. Cloak also joined the Dark X-Men with Dagger, but previous to that, the duo had adventures as well with the Power Pack and the New Mutants back in the day. Being not specifically X-Men team members, but at least, X-Men adjacent? And as I said, their origin has been debated throughout their comic book history. So while we don't mainly consider them mutants, they were mutant enough for Osborn to call on for his X-Men team. Beast has even said before that even the results of the test that they have done so far on the duo have been considered not enough to be conclusive in his mind. At least not as far as, Hank is concerned. Although it should be noted that the tests have pointed to them thus far not being mutant, at least with where we're at now in terms of their current origins. But of course, like I said, it's gone back and forth for a long time, so could always change again, who knows. Number 7. Omega Sentinel. Omega Sentinel ranks a little lower because technically she was referred to as a mutant at one point, but she is also very much a Sentinel, and a person turned into a Sentinel no less. And I guess because of that she's considered unique enough in regards to her journey and makeup to be considered, I guess, a mutant Sentinel. I don't really understand how that works, but yeah, that was a label that was mentioned in the 2004 Excalibur series in issue number 6, so I mean, it's out there, we gotta acknowledge it. I still am like though, I feel like if you're a mutant and you're a Sentinel, it feels a little contradictory to me. Karima Sharpander was actually once just a normal human woman, a police officer who actually almost fell in love with a mutant. She ended up being kidnapped and turned into a cyborg Sentinel sleeper agent by Bastion. She activated but would later be deprogrammed and then somehow end up disassembled after that, only to be reassembled by Beast and then asked to join the X-Men, which she did in 2006 in issue 192 of the 1991 X-Men series. Since then though, Omega Sentinel has gone back to being extremely Sentinel in nature, with her acting as a major antagonist in the 2021 Inferno series and pretty much everything leading up to that in very modern comics last few years. Number 6. Cerebro. Yeah, and Cerebro wasn't just a member either. They actually had their own team of X-Men that they were the leader of. Cerebro ended up gaining sentience and set out to catalog all mutants on Earth. That seems nice, but not in this way. They wanted to catalog those mutants by kidnapping them and then keeping them in basically like cryogenic pods. I guess as one does. I mean, I guess what else did we expect Cerebro to do when they became sentient, right? Finding and recording mutants was pretty much all they knew prior to that. Cerebro ended up creating their own X-Men team and leading it, although ultimately the real X-Men did have to come in and put a stop to their crazy schemes. And of course we also found out that Cerebro's X-Men were actually nanotech beings that they had created. But either way you look at this one, whether or not you consider Cerebro's team to be official enough, Cerebro themselves in a way was a member of the X-Men originally, they just didn't have sentience back in the day. But Cerebro has been around since almost day one when it comes to the main team and original roster. Might not be exactly day one, but it's pretty close to day one, I want to say. I can't remember if Cerebro's in issue number 1, but close. Number 5. Cerebra. I know, so many Cerebs on this list, but what do you expect? These are vital members of these teams either way you slice it. Cerebro was a much more loyal member of the X-Men team in the end in comparison to Cerebro. She was created from the remains of Cerebro and was an AI built by X-Men Forge. Cerebra ended up teaming up with the X-Men on various adventures and even fought alongside them to protect the young mutants of their current school, X-Haven, when it was attacked by demons. See, X-Haven existed within Limbo, but Magic had put up defenses to shield it. However, then those ended up failing and hence the demons attacked. Hence Cerebra defending the school. Cerebra made her first appearance in Extraordinary X-Men issue number 1. Number 4. Energizer. Katie Power is a member of the Power Pack who goes by the superhero name Energizer. The Power Pack are a team of kid superheroes who also all happen to be siblings. The children of James and Margaret Power, who got their powers from a dying alien seeking to protect the Earth, and the children specifically in an altercation, which is also sadly how they died. Katie ended up getting made an honorary X-Men in the pages of the 90s issue of the Uncanny X-Men, volume number 1, issue 195. Here Katie teams up with the X-Men to save her siblings from the Morlocks, who have taken basically all the kids and manipulated their memories and appearance so they believe they're actually like children of Morlock Anna Lee. Katie is given a jacket by Kitty Pryde in the issue and made an honorary X-Men as she joins the team to go down into the sewers and rescue her siblings. Also, don't worry, the siblings get rescued. I love the Power Pack. The Power Pack is like just an adorable, just wholesome, fun time. Number 3. Hepzibah. You might be familiar with Hepzibah if you are familiar or perhaps very familiar with the X-Men. Actually, Hepzibah isn't even really Hepzibah's real name, but we can't pronounce Hepzibah's real name, so just call her Hepzibah. She actually has a long history with the team of the X-Men, but also with an important family member of that team, namely Summer's patriarch, the father of Scott, Alex, and Gabriel, space pirate Corsair, or the father of Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan, if you rather. In fact, Hepzibah met Corsair in prison and helped to orchestrate the escape of those that would found the team known as the Starjammers. Hepzibah would go on to become very close to Corsair, and the two would even become lovers. She would team up with the X-Men multiple times during her comic book adventures, and even later join that team after Corsair's apparent death. Hepzibah is not a mutant though. She's an alien belonging to the race known as the Mephistozoids, who actually were prominent in the parts of space now known as part of the Shi'ar Empire, as they went to war with the Shi'ar and ultimately lost. And also later were like basically labeled as savages by the Shi'ar, and they like created propaganda to be like, they're all animals and they're all evil, which is pretty messed up. War is a messed up thing. Number 2. Lockheed. That's right, Lockheed might be out of this world, but not in the mutant sense. Lockheed is actually an alien who ended up enjoying the company of the X-Men, and specifically mutant and member Kitty Pryde, so much that he decided to leave his home and his people behind and go join the X-Men team. He often goes where Kitty does and is her loyal ally and companion, although he wasn't with her when she was in a bullet flying through space, but we'll talk about that more later. He has also been a double agent, staying with the X-Men while spying on them for SWORD as a secret undercover agent, tasked with keeping an eye on the mutants and feeding information to SWORD. He actually did this in exchange for SWORD's help in regards to problems on his homeworld, so if you're thinking, wow, that's pretty shady, Lockheed, look, he had his reasons, okay? And you know what? Lockheed still really loves the X-Men. I don't think he was trying to do it to be malicious even. Lockheed was actually a fearsome warrior and hero among his own people, and he actually left his fiance to stay with Kitty and the X-Men, so he also gave up a lot just to hang out with them. I love Lockheed. I almost made him number 1. Number 1. Juggernaut. Juggernaut might be known as a villain to the X-Men, but he's also joined the team too. In fact, his story is actually pretty sad. He spent most of his life on the outside looking in a lot of respects. When it came to his family, where his father seemed to even prefer his stepson to Kane, and in regards to the mutant community, which Juggernaut's always kind of like been a part of, but not really, because he's not really a mutant, so he's kind of kept out. Which is maybe why he became a villain? I don't know. Charles was always a part of the mutant world, but even when Kane Marco became Juggernaut, kind of reaching out for his own power, he was shunned in a way by his brother for doing so. Charles Xavier may be seen as the original creator of the superhero team of the X-Men, but in some ways, he was very much a gatekeeper, at least for Juggernaut, even though I know it feels weird to say that about Charles, since he's kind of a guy that's supposed to be like, all mutants come in, but look, he's got issues. Sure, Juggernaut was the one with the vendetta against Charles originally, seeing Charles as abandoning him, but it always felt like rather than resolve that conflict, the two both just decided to battle against one another for like a really long time. Fortunately, as time has worn on, things have changed between them. Juggernaut has changed. He's served both as a villain as well as an ally and even team member when it comes to the X-Men, and recently in the comics he's taken charge of his own power, going from being an avatar in essence of Cyttorak to being an anti-hero who serves only the causes he himself believes in, no longer tied to the will of Cyttorak. And he's got that cool new armor too. Still made from Cyttorak materials, but he's not like tied to him anymore because it wasn't given to him. Ha! Take that, Cyttorak! Number 10. Deathlok Prime. Deathlok Prime hails from the reality of Earth 10511, where in this future the Roxxon Corporation takes over the world. While not a mutant, he is a member of the X-Force who is also seen as a member of the staff for a short time in the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning. Deathlok Prime is actually a human cyborg in regards to his origin, but this doesn't stop him from lending his expertise and advice to the students of the Jean Grey School. While there, Deathlok Prime gives a guest lecture and even tells some of the kids what their futures might end up being, probably based on his own future. He also warns Wolverine about Evan Sabanur, aka Kid Apocalypse, who later takes the code name of Genesis himself. Deathlok Prime says that Evan could either be a hero or a deadly enemy of the mutants. Number 9. Quicksilver. Okay, so a lot of people in the comments for the part 1 of this list really wanted me to include folks like Franklin Richards, aka Powerhouse, Scarlet Witch, and her brother Quicksilver on that list, or on a potential part 2. Here is the problem with that. While Franklin, Wanda, and Pietro were all once considered mutants and yet are no longer, none of them were technically members of the X-Men team, which is why I couldn't really put any of them on that list. Wanda is first and foremost an Avenger and former X-Men villain, but not really an X-Men member. Franklin is always with the Fantastic Four or Future Foundation, and while he spent some time on Krakoa prior to losing his powers and mutant status, still, once again, not an X-Men. Quicksilver is the closest that we've got, which is why I've included him at the impassioned behest of a good number of you. So Quicksilver is here for you. He's speeding on into the list. Quicksilver was never on the X-Men team, but was a member of one of the X-Factor teams. And while many people forget this fact as it's no longer considered, I guess, the most iconic iteration of the team, the X-Factor team, the original one anyways, was created to actually be a team for the original X-Men to be on when they made their return to the spotlight years later, but the name was already basically taken at that point by a newer team featuring sort of the next era of mutant heroes such as Wolverine, Rogue, and Storm. The version of the X-Factor team that Quicksilver was a part of was also a return to that original team's government-funded roots, which the first X-Factor team was government-funded. Number 8. Elisande Stewart. Elisande Stewart was one of the founding members of the British Who, or at least one of the most important members of that organization, which also stands for the Weird Happenings Organization, I believe. As a result of her work, Elisande would often run into and team up with the Excalibur team. Later on, she ended up also being considered a member of the unofficial Muir Island X-Men team, as she aimed to help defend Muir Island from the Reavers. Elisande Stewart herself is just a normal human lady, not a mutant. She serves in the British Army, where she holds the rank of Brigadier. Or at least, she did hold that rank. She's technically dead now. She was framed by a rival organization and later killed without much thought by Jamie Braddock while he was using his reality warping powers, as Jamie is wont to do. Number 7. Kid Gladiator. Kid Gladiator, despite not being a mutant, actually attended the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning himself. On part 1 of this list, I talked about his sort of bodyguard turned school staff member Warbird, but I didn't make Q-Bark his own point. So here we go. Kid Gladiator is the son of Gladiator, aka Kalark, and as such can be extremely powerful due to his physiology and his heritage. However, as a kid, this kind of became a problem. At one point he destroyed half of the Shi'ar royal city Chandalar just because, well, he could. As such, his punishment was to go to Earth and learn how to better control and use his powers at the Jean Grey School, which I feel like he took as a punishment, but maybe Kalark was also like, look, you just need to figure it out, okay? Can't just go destroying cities and such. Number 6. Deadpool. Deadpool definitely wasn't a member of the X-Men because they wanted him there. While Deadpool has a long history with the X-Force team, when it comes to the mainstay team of the X-Men, the mutant staple team at Marvel Comics, Deadpool was actually only permitted to be a kind of like an honorary member. I mean, he was given full membership, so technically he's a member. So that the X-Men could keep a closer eye on Wade, basically. Deadpool desperately was searching for his purpose in life and got it in his head that joining the X-Men was the best way for him to be a hero. He ended up leaving the X-Men team after helping them out with a problem that they believed he'd actually caused, but in reality he was kind of just like framed for. Well, I guess in the end the X-Men kind of like kicked him off the team, but he also was gonna leave anyway. So there. Number 5. Dr. Kavita Rao. Dr. Dr. Kavita Rao is an important ally and friend to mutant kind, who was once a very misguided and powerful enemy. She attempted to cure the legacy virus when it was running rampant, but failed to do so before Beast Hank McCoy did. Later, she was then approached to create a cure for the mutant gene, with the understanding that it would not be used by force, but would simply be given to those that wanted it, people whose powers were basically super dangerous and had potentially even ruined their lives in some cases. Dr. Rao decided to accept the task. She successfully created a serum which turned mutants into humans. The cure was named Hope. After it was revealed that whole plot was about exterminating mutant kind, Dr. Rao submitted to the will of the X-Men. They destroyed her research, with only Hank keeping the last sample of the Hope serum. In the end, her villainous actions later inspired Dr. Rao to set down a path of redemption after the events of M-Day. She joined a team of scientists brought together by Beast to help bring back mutant kind. Dr. Rao would remain working with and alongside the X-Men throughout their Utopia days, and was later a staff member for the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning. Number 4. Dupe. Despite Dupe being a glorious weirdo, he's never really been confirmed as a mutant. We don't really know what exactly Dupe is. He is either a mutant or some kind of possibly alien or being from another dimension, but the bottom line is it's never been explicitly verified and set in stone what his origin is. And honestly, this is Dupe we're talking about, so I don't think it ever will be. As a result of all that, he's a candidate for this list, despite being maybe one of the weirdest teammates, mutant or no. Dupe has had many adventures with the X-Men and was even the receptionist at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, joining up with and aiding Wolverine there. He's also been seen on Krakoa since then. It's clear that Dupe feels most at home among mutants, and that is a place where he gets to be, even if he isn't a mutant. Number 3. Amanda Sefton. Amanda Sefton is the adopted sister of mutant and X-Men member Nightcrawler. She is also one of Kurt's major love interests. Yeah, it's complicated. Amanda was actually an alias that she adopted when she went to investigate what her adopted brother Kurt was up to after the death of their brother Steven was kinda pinned on Kurt. Undercover, Jermaine Zardos, which is her real name, became Amanda Sefton, and it was during this time that Kurt would actually fall in love with her, not recognizing, I don't think, that Amanda was his sister Jermaine at the time. At least, I'm pretty sure he didn't recognize that. I'm not sure if she really even changed her appearance, so it's a whole weird thing. Jermaine, or Amanda as we more commonly know her now, is a powerful sorceress, but is not a mutant, and has been an ally to the X-Men, also belonging to their unofficial Muir Island team. Number 2. Spider-Man. Spider-Man has been a longtime friend to the mutants. Although they initially got off on the wrong foot when they first ran into each other in the comics, they eventually realized that they were both on the side of good and ended up becoming friends and allies. Spider-Man in the 90s animated series even goes to the X-Men for help, hoping they can actually cure him, but only to learn that Professor X isn't so much about like curing anyone as he is about helping mutants find their place and their way. There is also the matter of the fact that Spider-Man isn't really even that kind of mutant. He's considered a mutate, having his genetic makeup altered by that radioactive spider bite, and possibly also by his fate to become Spider-Man as a preordained spider totem in the Web of Life and Destiny, which is also a thing. Spider-Man at one point isn't just a member of the team, he actually has his own team of mutants that he himself is responsible for teaching. How cool is that? Special class. Number 1. Longshot. While some might think of Longshot as a mutant, he doesn't consider himself as such. He is believed to be the clone and possibly both the father and son of Shatterstar. Things get weird in the Mojoverse, and Longshot is basically like kind of a paradoxical time loop in and of himself in terms of him and his heritage, as is Shatterstar in some ways, and kind of as is Spiral as well too. Shatterstar himself is a genetically engineered mutant, and Longshot is a clone of him, but despite that tie to sort of mutantdom or mutant kind, albeit a genetically engineered version of mutant kind, he doesn't consider himself to be a mutant. Longshot was instantly liked by the X-Men when they first found him, and ended up joining the team in fighting back against Mojo. Initially, he didn't actually remember who he was or much about himself, and spent a good amount of time on those first adventures with the X-Men team trying to recover his own lost memories.
Coming in at number 10, we have the bloodthirsty vampire Wolverine. In an alternate universe where vampires have launched an all-out assault on the United States, most of the X-Men are bidden and mind-controlled by the Lord of the Vampires, Dracula. Unfortunately for Dracula, however, Wolverine's healing ability allows him to regain his own mental control despite becoming a vampire, and thus is able to overthrow Dracula and become leader of the vampires. Consumed by a bloodlust that amplifies his already pretty frightening rage, Wolverine and his vampire army are able to wipe out most other superpowered life on the planet, only finally being defeated by the combined forces of Doctor Strange and the Punisher as a vampire hunting combination. Coming in at number 9, we have the evil Iceman hailing from the Age of Apocalypse universe. In a world where Apocalypse has taken over mutant kind and only Magneto and a few X-Men are capable of fighting back, the usually optimistic Bobby Drake was forged into a heartless warrior, giving him much stronger control of his ice powers than other depictions of Iceman, and becoming a living streak of ice that can travel instantaneously through water. This version of Iceman would eventually betray his teammates and ally himself with Dark Beast, and was only eventually able to be defeated by having his head shoved inside of a furnace, which I guess is one way to kill an ice-based villain, but geez, that's a little bit overkill. Coming in at number 8, we have the brainwashed Wolverine of Earth 14850. At one point in the regular Marvel Universe, Wolverine was captured and brainwashed by Hydra in order to assassinate the Avengers, but luckily was able to be deprogrammed before he did any real damage. On this alternate Earth, however, the deprogramming never took place, and Wolverine's killing spree of superpowered heroes was able to last for months. Armed with all of his incredible abilities, absolutely no remorse, and the addition of Hydra-developed teleporting technology that nullified even Wolverine's usual weaknesses, and this was a horrifying enemy that even the Avengers couldn't handle. Coming in at number 7, we have Basilisk, the twisted, mask-wearing variant of Cyclops. On an alternate world where anti-mutant sentiment is somehow even higher than the regular Marvel Universe, Scott Summers' backstory is made even more tragic. Killing 7 people, including his own parents when his powers first manifest, Cyclops is locked away in the prison Alcatraz and forced to wear a mask made of ruby quartz to control his laser vision. The evil governor of the prison even goes so far as to mutilate Cyclops and remove his eyelids, making the twisted basilisk mask the only method Scott has to control his deadly abilities, a favor that Cyclops would repay by killing the governor and launching a prison break that would eventually lead him back to this universe's X-Men. Coming in at number 6, we're taking a bit of a break from the comics with the Wolverine symbiote from the video game Spider-Man: Web of Shadows. In this game's story, Wolverine has traveled to New York City to deal with a growing symbiote infestation, and even briefly fights Spider-Man when he believes the Wallcrawler is actually Venom. Unfortunately for Wolverine, he finds himself overwhelmed by actual symbiotes on top of a church and attacks Spider-Man again as the Wolverine symbiote. With all of his usual healing abilities on top of all the usual symbiote enhancements, this version of Wolverine might just be the scariest he's ever been. Coming in at number 5, we have the Ultimate Universe version of Jamie Madrox, aka Multiple Man. Multiple Man's powers have always been a bit overwhelming, with the ability to seemingly create an unlimited amount of duplicates of himself as long as they're generated one at a time. In the Ultimate Universe, however, this power was pushed beyond its limits when Jamie allied himself with the Brotherhood of Mutants and created tens of thousands of bomb-wielding versions of himself with no regard for his own life. While the Ultimatum event featured many shocking moments, few are as existentially disturbing as literal thousands of clones strapping explosives to themselves just to wipe out several superhero bases. Coming in at number 4, we have the possessed Professor X from Earth 6141. During the event known as M-Day, when Scarlet Witch wiped out most of mutant kind, the extremely powerful telepath known as the Shadow King was able to escape the loss of his powers by transferring his mind through the multiverse to the alternate world of Earth 6141, where he was able to successfully possess the mind of this world's Charles Xavier before the X-Men were even formed. Combining both of their telepathic might, this version of Xavier turned all of his students into perfect killing machines, and placed them firmly under his psychic control, getting them to kill any superheroes who tried to interfere in the Shadow King's schemes. While eventually defeated by the team known as New Excalibur, this group of Shadow X-Men left their world shaking in terror. Coming in at number 3, we have the vampire variant of Storm, aka Bloodstorm. In an alternate reality where Storm was bitten by Dracula before discovering the X-Men, Storm came to Charles Xavier for help with her condition. Unfortunately, her bloodlust was too strong and she wound up feasting on both the Professor and Beast. Horrified at what she'd done, this version of Storm would eventually try and redeem herself after she found herself as part of an invasion force attacking the main Marvel universe. While she eventually bonded and made amends with the Beast of this dimension, her combination of weather controlling and vampire powers made Bloodstorm one of the more powerful X-Men variants that the regular X-Men have ever had to face. Coming in at number 2, we have one of the most powerful enemies the X-Men have ever seen with Brother Mutant. On Earth 127, a male variant of the Scarlet Witch, known as the Scarlet Warlock, attempted to cast a spell that would transfer Wolverine's adamantium skeleton to Magneto, thus giving Magneto an incredible power boost given his magnetic abilities. However, something with the spell went wrong, and the Scarlet Warlock, Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, and the villain Mesmero were all merged into a singular being known as Brother Mutant. With all 5 of these mutants' powers combined into one villainous figure, Brother Mutant was such a powerful threat that a multiversal team of Wolverines had to be assembled specifically to stop him, just to ensure that all of that power wasn't unleashed on the rest of the Marvel multiverse. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the one and only Magneto from the Ultimate Universe. Unlike a lot of the other entries on this list, this Magneto variant doesn't have any additional powers or physical mutations to make him even more intimidating, but rather is terrifying just because of his sheer willpower. This version of Magneto is much more cynical and dark than the complex figure of the regular Marvel Universe, and when he believed his had been killed by Dr. Doom, Ultimate Magneto was furious enough to begin a global switching the polarity of Earth's poles with his magnetic powers and beginning the incredibly controversial event known as Ultimatum. This version of Magneto caused the deaths of millions of people and dozens of beloved superheroes, and was only finally able to be stopped when Cyclops put him out of his misery with a laser blast to the head.
Number 10. Crusader. Crusader is the daughter of X-Men team member Rogue and Avenger Captain America. I know, a weird combination. But in the reality of Earth 9811, these two ended up together after the heroes and villains on Battleworld decided to call a truce. Remaining there, they settled down and raised families, putting their differences aside. I'm not sure how their relationship worked, with Rogue not really being able to touch people and all at this point, or how she had a child considering that, but perhaps, like on Earth 616, she eventually was able to work through the trauma causing this side effect of her powers. Or perhaps the Captain America of Earth 9811 was immune to her involuntary energy and power draining effects. Either way, Sarah is their daughter. She gets much of her power from her mother, or rather she gets much of her power from the power her mother had absorbed in her day, meaning that Sarah is super strong, durable, and can fly. She is also considered worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and wields her father's shield. Number 9. Wolverine. I really wanted to put Laura Kinney higher up on this list because, well, I love her so much, but unfortunately the Psionics are just always pushing some of my favorite and most powerful characters further down on these lists. Those psionics. Oh well. Laura Kinney as X-23 and now Wolverine is still one of the most powerful children of the X-Men around. Some argue that she is more clone, while others argue that she is more biological offspring of Logan, but in reality, she's kind of a bit of both. She was created as a female clone of Wolverine after his genetic material was combined with that of her creator, scientist Sarah Kinney. Sarah noticed that there were damage spots basically in the samples of Logan's genetic material that they had, which was why their cloning process had been unsuccessful up to this point. And so she used her own genetic material to patch those rough spots, which made Laura a female clone. Sarah was forced to carry Laura to term as a surrogate by her jealous colleague Xander Rice, as punishment for even creating the female clone to begin with, a strategy that admittedly had not been approved. Laura has powers similar to her father. She has a regenerative healing factor and was also trained from birth to be a skilled fighter, bodyguard, and assassin. Number 8. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality of 13729. Yeah, sadly Storm and T'Challa have never had a child together in the main continuity. I know, it's a bit of a bummer. Unless they had like a real secret child that we just don't know about yet, but I doubt it. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm, that she's a skilled combatant as well. As while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she is also an extremely skilled fighter. And if she's Black Panther's daughter, then she should definitely be a skilled fighter. I mean, you got two amazing parents that are both amazing fighters, so just saying. Number 7. Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the son of Charles Xavier and Mystique, if you can believe that. I know, it's pretty shocking. Charles Xavier II was technically born into the reality of Earth 616, where we later find out that while Mystique actually took the form of Moira when giving birth, Charles actually knew that he was in a relationship with Raven, so it wasn't like a trick of hers. They were actually just wanted to be together, I guess. This version of Charles, however, is an all grown up one from the alternate future of Earth 13729. When his powers first manifested, he accidentally killed his adoptive mother and ended up later joining forces with his half-brother Raze, another child of Mystique's sired by Wolverine, another child of the X-Men. Charles Xavier II has a brilliant and conniving mind and, like his father, is an immensely gifted telepath, capable of using his powers to bend others to his will. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and while you might not think of Magneto as being an X-Men, considering, you know, he started out as an X-Men villain, he has also worked with the team before and even served as a member himself. Heck, at one point he was in charge of the whole New Mutants crew, let's not forget that. Magneto may have some questionable methods when it comes to getting justice that put him on the spectrum of villain, but I think at the end of the day, he's just trying to do what's best for mutants. Or at least what he thinks is best for mutant kind. Polaris, like her father, also has magnetic-based powers, which, like her father, are also pretty impressive. Polaris is considered an alpha-level mutant and recently got to join the X-Men team herself after being elected to join them in the Krakoan X-Men elections. Psychic elections. Imagine if we could all just vote psychically. That would be awesome. That would be so much easier. You would just like sit down and you'd be like, who do I want to vote for? Done. Number 5. Cable. Cable is the son of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, non-X member Madeline Pryor, who later becomes the villain known as the Goblin Queen, and another X-Man's, Jean Grey, who kind of becomes like an adoptive mother but who also possesses Madeline's memories of raising baby Christopher. Because comics. Cable is Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, often referred to as just Nathan Summers or really just Cable, although back in the day we did know him as Baby Christopher. Cable as a baby was kidnapped by Apocalypse and infected with the techno-organic virus. This is the only thing that makes him weak-ish, but really he is still amazingly strong as he can even fend off that virus, containing it to one side of his body using his psionic powers. That in and of itself is pretty impressive, as the techno-organic virus is generally known for being, well, unstoppable. Even with his psionic powers mainly preoccupied, Cable is still a hard one to beat, as he has so many combatant-based skills that he brings to the table, and he is also an experienced time traveler besides. Number 4. Rachel Summers. Yes, get ready, because many of the most powerful X-Kids out there just happen to be Summers related, so yeah, get ready for that. Honestly, I've always wanted to do a video just to explain the complicated nature that is the Summers and Grey family tree, which honestly is a lot, and it's very timey-wimey. humanity. Rachel herself is one of those very complex kids of theirs. She is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers from the alternate Earth of 811. In that reality, she was made into a hound, a weapon used to hunt down mutants, even being one herself. Rachel is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic who also has the ability to chronoskim and manipulate time, even traveling through it. Rachel is also known for being an avatar of the Phoenix, at one time actually considered the true avatar for it, but then later having the power sort of dialed down to a mere echo of it. So she was no longer the true avatar, they were just like, you just have a thing, and it's not even like the real Phoenix Force, but it's like a version of it. Still, the seeming piece or echo of the Phoenix Force that resides within her has been known to flare up from time to time, or her connection to the Phoenix Force, however we want to see that, occasionally boosting Rachel to an off-the-charts level of power. But like I said, that doesn't happen all the time. Number 3. Hope Summers. Hope is the adopted daughter of Cable, who was originally known as the Mutant Messiah Baby. Cable saved Hope from Bishop, who basically wanted to destroy her. In Bishop's reality, the Mutant Messiah would end up causing the event that led to the oppression and persecution of mutants. However, in Cable's reality, the Mutant Messiah would grow up to become a savior, so you can see why these two were opposed on this topic. For the X-Men of Earth 616, the Mutant Messiah was the first new mutant to have been born since basically M-Day, and so she brought hope to the mutants of the 616 reality. Cable body-slided with Hope to another time to raise her in safety. He would end up naming Hope after her adoptive mother, his love who died, Hope, and she got the Summers name from Cable himself. But although she looks a lot like Jean, she actually has no biological relation to the Summers or the Grey families, at least not that we know of. Hope's mutant abilities allow her to copy the powers of anyone within a certain range. Hope also gains access to these powers without struggling at all to use them, receiving them basically at their peak level and with the auto knowledge basically of how to use them. So if you're like, oh, she's gotta like figure it out, no, she's just like instant god mode with those powers basically. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. Wanda is known for being one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. She has used her powers to completely warp reality the world over, and her chaos magic has pulled off other immensely world-changing feats, such as flipping the alignment of all major heroes and villains in the comics during the events of Axis. Initially, her chaos magic powers were believed to be somewhat mutant in origin. In fact, they were kind of presented initially as like Jinx-like mystical mutant abilities during her first appearances. However, we've since learned that both Wanda and her superpowered brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, were never really mutants at all, nor were they related to Magneto. However, they still spent a good amount of their life around Magneto, who secretly believed them to be his children, and then another good amount of time thinking that he was their actual father, until it was revealed that this was all due to manipulation by the High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary just coming in and messing pretty much everybody up when it comes to their backstories and origins. Wanda herself has never really gotten along with the X-Men, especially since the events of M-Day, but she is still considered, I think, a part of Magneto's family, and a powerful one at that, regardless of her status as a mutant or a non-mutant. I know there are some people out there that want to be like, it never happened, but like, they still spent a lot of time together thinking that they were family, so I think we can still count it, friends. Also, make Wanda a mutant again. Do it. Make it happen. Give me Wanda and Quicksilver back. Number 1. X-Man. X-Man is Nathaniel Grey, the lab-born child made by combining the genetic materials of both Jean Grey and Cyclops. So basically like Cable, but if he had been made perfectly by villain Mr. Sinister. He actually hails from the alternate reality of AOA, Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295. Here, Sinister created him to use as his own weapon, but of course, Nate being so powerful, managed to escape Sinister and instead ended up being raised by Forge of Earth 295. He is considered one of the most powerful mutants of all time, which would also make him one of the most powerful children of the X-Men out there. Nate can warp reality, resurrect the dead, resurrect himself, travel to alternate Earths and dimensions, and even manipulate the time stream. He is basically the most OP of characters when it comes to the Marvel Universe, and if you've seen artwork of him, you will probably recognize him as someone who looks like Mutant Jesus, which yes, he is god level, so that is the point. Number 10. Christoph and Kadira Von Doom. Christoph and Kadira Von Doom are the children of Storm and Dr. Doom. They come from the novel series X-Men The Chaos Engine, which is actually a trilogy wherein we explore what would happen if 3 great villains took control of the Marvel Universe, creating their own version of a perfect world using the Cosmic Cube. It starts off with Doom's variation on this world. In this reality, Dr. Doom has made Storm his wife, and she rules by his side as his Empress. The union of these powerful characters produces 2 children, Christoph and Kadira. We can assume, of course, being the children of both Doom assume and Storm that they would be physically, mentally, and demonstrably powerful when it came to their abilities, especially being raised by these two powerhouses. Also, if I wasn't clear about this is an alternate reality, so if you're like, when did this happen? It is not main continuity. Number 9. Nocturne. Nocturne is the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Obviously, not from the main continuity. In fact, Talia Wagner is known for being a part of a multiversal hero team, the Exiles. Nocturne is from the alternate reality of Earth 2182. In fact, back on her home reality, which first appeared in Millennial Visions, Talia is also known as a member of the X-Men team, fighting alongside her father, Nightcrawler, who is actually their field leader. She is a low-level telepath with incredible superhuman agility skills, the ability to wall crawl, and the ability to fire powerful brimstone hex energy bolts, something inherited from both her father and her mother. Nocturne's physical appearance is also similar to her father's, a bit demonic looking, and of course, blue. All my blue X-Men. Top 10 blue X-Men. Actually, I feel like there's a lot of X-Men that are blue. Or mutants that are blue, maybe? There's a lot of blue mutants, for sure. I don't know about X-Men team members. Number 8. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy Hudson is the son of Wolverine from the alternate reality of Earth 1610. His powers are similar to his father's, but in this reality they're believed to work a little bit differently. As opposed to just being insane healing powers, Jimmy's power set in this universe as a mutant is believed to be based more in survival. So these powers aren't necessarily just about healing, but survival instincts and capability, meaning that Jimmy is just much better at surviving and evolving to survive than anyone else alive on the planet. And I mean that because in this reality, Wolverine eventually dies, so really Jimmy is the only one left alive who's really good at surviving. Jimmy Hudson has also been bonded to a poison before and gained control of his poison, which are basically alien-like beings resembling symbiotes in look and abilities, but ultimately a different alien race themselves, called poisons. So yeah. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine and Magneto's wife, Magda Lencher, although Wolverine urges him through a letter when the truth of his connection to Jimmy is revealed that he actually shouldn't focus too much on, who his biological parents are. Jimmy was raised by adoptive parents. His dad actually served with Logan in the war and agreed to look after Jimmy in his father's place, even giving the young boy his own family name. Hudson. Number 7. Esme. Esme is one of the main Stepford Cuckoos. Well, I mean, I guess they're all pretty main, but you know what I mean. She's probably one of the most well-known if we're talking offhand about how many of the Cuckoos you can name. Esme and the other Cuckoos are basically like the children of Emma Frost, although as I've said before, not children that she had consensually. And I didn't say that before in this list, but if you've heard me talk about the Stepford Cuckoos and their relation to Emma, yeah. Instead, these were lab babies basically made from Emma's eggs that were stolen from Emma while she was in a comatose state. Esme, like the other Cuckoos, is kind of like a genetic clone as well as a child of Emma's, and Emma actually does consider the Cuckoos to be like her daughters. She treats them as though they were her own flesh and blood, and often her own responsibility, kinda stepping in to like play mom sometimes, although she does give them freedom to make their own mistakes. I guess what I mean is Emma isn't known for being like a controlling kind of parent. She's like, I'm here when you need me, otherwise you do you. More recently in the comics, Esme, known for her diamond form and powerful telepathic abilities, teamed up and primarily dated young Cable. Well, technically all the Cuckoos were dating him at one point, though I would say Esme was basically the main squeeze of young Cable and the sister that he was most taken by while he was dating all of them. And if you're like, whoa, how did that happen? The Stepford Cuckoos, they share things because they're kind of like a hive mind. So they're like, we'll just all date this person. It's cool. Also Krakoa, everyone's dating everyone. Number 6, Akihiro. Akihiro is the son of Wolverine and his wife Itsu. Unfortunately, before Akihiro was even born, his life took a turn for the worse. Along with inheriting his father's powers, I think he also inherited some of his tragic luck. Wolverine has the worst luck, I think. His mother, Itsu, was killed before she could give birth to him, assassinated. The child was believed dead, but in reality he had been cut from her womb and possibly, due to his inherited healing powers, miraculously survived. Although, that's not clear, because usually your powers don't manifest until puberty, but sometimes your powers manifest when you're in the womb. I mean, look at Professor X with Cassandra Nova, apparently that's a thing that happened. Akihiro would grow up and become a pawn of the villain known as Romulus. For most of his life, he'd also be known as Daken, a cruel nickname given to him when he was a child, being raised by his adoptive parents. The nickname was given to him because of his mixed race appearance, being part American and part Japanese. Though to be clear, his parents weren't the ones that gave it to him. It was people around his parents. appearance. Akahiro's powers are similar to Wolverine's, though his bone claws are a little bit different in terms of placement and appearance. Like his father, Akahiro is also known for being a skilled fighter as well. The apple does not fall far from the tree when it comes to fighting abilities. Number 5. Xandra Naramani. Xandra is Professor X's daughter, who is created out of his genetic material and that of his lover's genetic material, the Shi'ar Magistrix Lilandra Naramani, after both of them were believed dead. As such, Xandra grew up to become Shi'ar royalty and also spent a good amount of her life hunted because of this, with various parties attempting to use her for their own means. Xandra is an extremely gifted telepath. She can manipulate others' minds, read minds, and can create hyper-realistic telepathic illusions. Number 4. Ruby Summers. She was the ex-offspring used in our oh-so-clickable thumb for the part 1 to this list, and although she was on my extended list for that part 1, my long brainstorm that I came up with, I didn't get around to talking about her because I kind of reached a point where there were too many Summers children on that list, and I was like, I don't want to make this a top 10 children of Cyclops. We got that list, and also that's not what this list is. What can I say? Sykes got strong genes. That's why Mr. Sinister is so obsessed after all and is known as the #1 fan of the Summers Club. Scott Summers is Ruby's dad in the alternate reality she hails from, and Emma Frost is her mother. This makes Ruby fairly powerful, not at the level of Hope or X-Man, but still pretty impressive. She's also super cool looking, which is an added bonus. Ruby hails from the alternate Earth of 1191, the home reality of famous X-Men ally Bishop. Ruby is also capable of emitting optic blasts like her dad and his brothers, but she has more control over when and how she emits these blasts, unlike her dad who's like, I literally need a visor. Ruby also comes with her Ruby form, which like her mother's Diamond form, grants her invulnerability and pretty much immortality. Number 3. Olivier Raven. Olivier Raven is legally known as Olivier Lebeau and is one of the alternate reality children of Gambit and Rogue. Honestly, I feel like there are not enough of these kids out in the multiverse. I don't know if that's just me. For a couple as famous as Gambit and Rogue, I mean, you would think that we'd have a lot more kids from them, at least through the multiverse. Though admittedly, I'm not quite sure that Rogue and Gambit are really the kid-having type, at least from what I've seen in the main continuity. They seem pretty content with just having their fur babies right now. So maybe they just aren't super into having kids as a family. Olivier hails from the reality of Earth 41001, the reality of Gen Next, a group Ollie is part of. He has powers similar to his mother's, except he has better control over them and is able to choose when and how much power, life energy, and memories he absorbs via physical contact, or doesn't absorb in cases where he just, wants to make physical contact without using his powers. He can also absorb powers on a more permanent level, although he has less control it seems over when this happens. Like his father, he also seems to have some charm-based powers. Either that, or he's just charming. Number 2. Proteus. Proteus is the son of Moira McTaggart, who before I would count more as like an ex-ally, but with recent revelations, we can definitely consider her a member in the same way we might consider someone like Charles Xavier. It turns out that Moira herself was a mutant this whole time, possessing unique reincarnation powers. She has also been known for being a leader and teacher of X-Men groups before, including the time when she led a team that Professor X then recruited, sending them into Krakoa to rescue the original X-Men. Not Krakoa as we know it now, but Krakoa as it was back in the day when it was like a monster island. Proteus is Kevin McTaggart, son of Joseph and Moira McTaggart. He is currently one of the 5 on Krakoa, and his powers as part of that team are mainly used to warp reality, allowing the non-viable eggs that Egg, formerly known as Gold Balls, produces to become viable for life. These eggs are then used to grow new versions of fallen mutants. Proteus is an Omega level mutant who requires hosts to survive. Initially, Kevin had a body, but now he's basically just pure energy. The hosts he controls and feeds off of eventually are exhausted and killed by that energy drain, making him not just a powerful psionic mutant, but also a powerful energy vampire as well, unintentionally. Number 1. Legion. Legion is the son of Professor Charles Xavier that was conceived when he had a love affair with Gabrielle Haller, which is where Legion gets his legal last name, as his given name is David Haller. Legion is so powerful because he suffers from a severe dissociative identity disorder, where he has more than 100 100 personas residing within him. Each persona has a number, many have names, and they each have their own specific power set that show up whenever they take over. Because of this, there is almost nothing that Legion isn't capable of. He can manipulate matter and time. We've seen him time travel and completely warp reality as a result of his possible abilities. He also has some pretty powerful hair, which I gotta say, I'm happy that he still rocks even now in the current modern day comics. He's still got that sweet hair. So tall.